Hey guys, we're going to be reading Roald Dahl's Matilda today. We're going to start reading this book every day from now on until we finish it, which is nice. I love this book. It's one of my favourite books ever. So we're going to read a little bit of chapter 1, then I'm going to ask you some questions. And this week we're going to be focusing on our imprint skills. Remember Imprints, Iggy? We're going to be focusing on those skills this week. So if you guys carry on reading any more of the chapter, just remember to ask your parents to ask you any inference questions that they might have. Chapter 1, The Reader of Books. It's a funny thing about mothers and fathers. Even when their own child is the most disgusting little blister you could ever imagine, they still think he or she is wonderful. Some parents go further. They become so blinded with adoration that they manage to convince themselves that their child has qualities of genius. Well, there's nothing very wrong with all this. It's the way of the world. It's only when the parents begin telling us about the brilliance of their own revolting offspring that we start shouting, "Ugh, bring us a basin, we're going to be sick." School teachers suffer a great deal from having to listen to this sort of twaddle from proud parents, but usually they get their own back when the time comes to write the end-of-term reports. If I were a teacher, I would cook up some real scorchers for the children of doting parents. "Your son, Maximilian," I would write, "is a total washout. I hope you have a family business you can push him into when he leaves school, because he sure as heck won't get a job anywhere else." Or if I were feeling lyrical that day, I might write, "It's a curious truth that grasshoppers have their own hearing organs in the side of their abdomen. Your daughter, Vanessa, judging by what she's learnt this term, has no hearing organs at all." I might even delve deeper into natural history and say, "The periodical cicada spends 6 years as a grub underground, and no more than 6 days as a free creature of sunlight and air. Your son Wilfred has spent 6 years as a grub in this school, and we're still waiting for him to emerge from the chrysalis." A particularly poisonous little girl might sting me into saying, "Fiona has the same glacial beauty as an iceberg, but unlike the iceberg, she has absolutely nothing at all below the surface." I think I might enjoy writing end-of-term reports for the stinkers in my class. But enough of that. We have to get on. Occasionally, one comes across parents who take the opposite line, who show no interest at all in their children. And these, of course, are far worse than the doting ones. Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood were 2 such parents. They had a son called Michael and a daughter called Matilda, and the parents looked upon Matilda in particular as nothing more than a scab. A scab is something you have to put up with until time comes when you can flick it off and pick it away. Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood looked forward enormously to the time when they could pick their little daughter off and flick her away, preferably into the next country, or even further than that. It's bad enough when parents treat ordinary children as though they were scabs and bunions, but it becomes somehow a lot worse when the child in question is extraordinary. And by that, I mean sensitive and brilliant. Matilda was both of these things, but above all, she was brilliant. Her mind was so nimble and she was so quick to learn that her ability should have been obvious to even the most half-witted of parents. But Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood were both so gormless and so wrapped up in their own silly little lives that they'd failed to notice anything at all unusual about their daughter. To tell the truth, I doubt they would have noticed if she crawled into the house with a broken leg. Matilda's brother Michael was perfectly normal, but the sister, as I said, was something to make your eyes pop. By the age of 1.5, her speech was perfect, and she knew as many words as most grown-ups. The parents, instead of applauding her, called her a noisy chatterbox and told her sharply that small girls should be seen and not heard. By the time she was 3, Matilda had taught herself to read by studying newspapers and magazines that lay around the house. At the age of 4, she could read fast and well, and she naturally began hankering after books. The only book in the whole of this enlightened household was something called Easy Cooking, which belonged to her mother. When she read this from cover to cover and learnt all the recipes off by heart, she decided she wanted something more interesting. We're going to stop there for today, and I'm going to ask you an inference question. I want you to think really carefully about why Matilda's mum and dad think of her as a scab. And give me some reasons why you think they compare her to a scab.